Sir, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the interim budget 2009. Sir, last year you gave me an opportunity similarly to speak in this House on the 2008-2009 budget. And in that speech, I had raised several red flags of caution throughout the speech, and I'd like to read out I'd like to read out some parts of my speech, sir.
Nobody else.
I quote, "It is clear that certain critical parts of our economy are showing signs of a slowdown. Reports point to a slowdown becoming a slow and sure reality. The finance minister has said he will keep an eye on this and take necessary action to ensure that sectors don't go sick. I am only afraid that given the government's general track record of responsiveness, any response will be too late to prevent an irreversible slowdown and all its attendant problems." End quote. Sir, I had also said in that same speech, I quote, "This year is a transition year and a critical year. It's important that we don't fall off the growth track and get derailed. I remember very well what happened last time our same policymakers presided over a pre-election budget in the mid-90s. Increased public spending in the face of an economic slowdown threw us into a 3-year recession. The budget from amongst all the budgets of this government is the most risky to pull off. The weakening global economic cues and the signs of our domestic slowdown in some critical areas reinforces the view that this could be a high-risk budget with consequences on current growth strategy and slope." End quote. So unfortunately, these red flags were to no effect, and my worst fears are becoming a reality, compounded by a sequence of misreadings and missteps by policymakers over the last 12 months. Recent IIP data of 3.9% versus 9.2% for the same period last year points to a sharp slide in economic and industrial performance. Blue chip companies are scrambling for credit and financing. The small and medium scale and the unorganized sectors are almost at a standstill. The job market is crumbling, and most companies will find themselves smaller next year compared to this year. The fiscal situation, as you know, sir, has caused an S&P downgrade yesterday. This picture is startling, and it is clear we are in the midst of a full-blown and escalating economic crisis. So 2008-2009 is the year when our growth got derailed. The question now is for how long and what the costs and consequences of this derailment will be. And so most importantly from my perspective, it is a year that has revealed that we had started believing too much of our own marketing hype, that the Indian growth formula was sustainable and continuous. That has proved to be completely delusional. It has laid bare the fact that exuberant public spending alone isn't a solution. There are many more structural changes and reforms that are needed before our objectives of an inclusive economic architecture can be reached and can be made sustainable. So the Honorable Finance Minister said in his budget speech that we are in extraordinary times and we need extraordinary measures. I agree, sir. We all agree that a prolonged lag in getting the economy to respond and grow again will have serious consequential and collateral damages on vast parts of our real economy, on the financial sector, on the manufacturing sector, on exporters, and consequently on jobs. So let me outline what I believe the government should be doing, sir. In my view, the current crisis has no longer a monetary policy solution alone. The focus has moved to the fiscal and the real economy side to stop the slide and to restart the economy. So let's be very clear about this problem. The problem is depth of demand, stalled credit, and stalled investment flows. Sectoral stimuli packages are meaningless if they don't catalyze these 3 points. Let me take one at a time, sir. Consumer spending, for example, will restart only if there are sharp increases in consumer disposable income and or sharply lower prices to the consumer. This will require, there is no way of avoiding it, direct taxation reliefs. These will put money in the hands of consumers, and I believe yesterday's announcements by the Honorable Finance Minister for the first time dealing with taxation holds some promise of restarting consumer demand. So the real economy is also currently suffering from the lack of credit flow from credit markets. Despite the significant additional liquidity pumped in into the banking system by the Reserve Bank, there is clearly no increase in credit offtake by corporates and other borrowers. This situation will only worsen in coming months as the government intervenes in these markets to borrow to finance the fiscal deficit. While some of this is due to risk aversion on part of banks, some of it is also due to the mismatch between cost to the banks versus the required lending rates. I believe this can be addressed through an interest subvention model, which is currently applicable to the exporting sectors, extended to various other sectors in distress. These two, along with using MAT and dividend distribution taxes again as offsettable against investments, along with enhanced fiscal headroom for state spending, can form a package of fiscal steps to steadily and systematically revive the economy. So let me touch one point on the structural side. It is clear, sir, and it's obvious to most people who are following what's going on, that the incoming government will have to make an effort in creating a consensus on the key issue of public spending, which has expanded significantly under this government, but unfortunately with no concerted effort at measuring and improving delivery and outcomes. As Pratap Bhanu Mehta of the Center of Policy Research said in a recent article, sir, inclusive growth is not just about profligate spending, but thinking about the architecture of the economy, including the architecture of spending as a whole. The recent CAG report saying 51,000 crores allocated to various schemes were transferred to NGOs with no record of spending and diversion, no record of spending, and diversion of the SIDF funds to cultural programs are symptoms of an economic strategy that spends without focusing on outcomes and results. This is a strong reason any public spending-driven stimulus package of the sort suggested by many economists will fail. It is hopelessly leaky and will not deliver on its outcomes and objectives and will only create a spurt in corruption. Sir, 2 more minutes, sir. So delivery of our public spending and reforms of our subsidy delivery mechanisms are critical as part of our governance reforms in the coming years. Governance reforms are more difficult and time-consuming, and so we must start this at the earliest, and given the current economic context and the uncertainty around it, this becomes even more pronounced and urgent. So let me end by saying that the challenges to kickstart our fiscally stretched and deadlocked economies are daunting. Managing an economy on a downtrend requires special grit and skills, very different from managing an up economy. The numbers of 5.5% fiscal deficit for the coming year are just not credible, and I believe will be missed by a mile. And to quote the Standard & Poor's, India's fiscal position has deteriorated to a level that is unsustainable. We are currently sitting, I believe, sir, on a fiscal time bomb that threatens to unravel and wipe out the gains made by our economy over the last 5 years in the NDA and the UPA governments. I agree with my colleague, Mr. N.K. Singh, that the economic cycle should not be allowed to be disrupted by the political cycle, sir. Thank you.